Ladies and gentlemen, I, as the leader of the opposing team, would like to give out some of my stance on why the government seems about that the criminalization of victims' crimes are flawed. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have heard that the government has framed this debate as both moral and public health issue, arguing that people trapped in poverty or addiction of all sorts need proper care and not deliberate imprisonment. While we agree that people who suffer from those need and deserve empathy, but we challenge the idea given out by the government's team that views the criminalization as the best or only solution. So what we think of decriminalization is that it's not a way to eliminate harm, rather as a way to obscurify it. Many such cases of these victimless crimes have brought societal ripple effects that the government plans to underestimate, which made us believe that we needed a reformation of the law and not removal. A simply better alternative would be replacing those incarcerated due to victimless crimes with, like you mentioned earlier, putting them in rehabilitation centers. But we also see other ways, like giving them community service. So those who are, for example, addicted to drugs or have sold their bodies on the street have better use in society. We have previously mentioned that if the victimless crime is consensual or directed toward themselves, it's harmless to anyone else but themselves. But that pretty much ignores the broader social fabric, since these crimes I've mentioned earlier have evolved to much terrible and harmful crimes. Like drug addicts throwing out the used syringes, it can spread biohazard towards the people living in that area. Prostitutes may have sexually transmitted diseases inside them, and those clients that have engaged in sexual intercourse can catch like diseases such as herpes, syphilis, gonorrhea, and AIDS. And if we decriminalize it, then it makes coerced versus consensual sex work harder to distinguish. And the final case example of victimless crime is gambling. Now, this dangerous habit is the main case of the cause of destruction of household. Many addicts like taking out loans from bogus services and commit theft or destroy financial security. Perpetrators of victimless crimes are eligible to have criminal records, since if we see those people who are known to, say, be heroin addicts, meth heads, and prostitutes in the workplace, we are definitely sure that they will perform poorly and they all lost labor productivity. If the effects of these perpetrators being repeat offenders happen, then it is sure that we must put them in a societal, solitary, quiet confinement, since we see them that in prison environment they are littered with drug addicts or drug dealers, rapists, murderers, and such. We expect them to be treated well until their addictions no longer burden them in life. While you have said that perpetrators of victimless crimes will be equated with murder and manslaughter, just remember that prison sentences for either crimes are always different. So think about it. Manslaughter or killing without the intention or premeditation leads up to 15 years imprisonment. Murder, including premeditated murder, can be punished with death penalty or life imprisonment, while on the other hand, victimless crimes like drug addiction or prostitution, they respectively can lead to maximum imprisonment of 4 years or 6 years imprisonment. That's corresponding to the assortment mentioned earlier. So, ladies and gentlemen, we all know that laws shape public morality. By decriminalizing it, the government implicitly says that doing those such of crimes is socially acceptable, which means that the youth and vulnerable groups like people who live in poverty and homeless people have the bigger likelihood to experiment with risky behaviors if there are no legal consequences. So to put it in a more understandable manner, let's say that there's this kid named Kevin. Now, Kevin is a victim of bullying in school. It burdens him a lot, it makes him stressed out. So in order to cope with that problem, he wants to try out doing drugs. But he knows that he'd be in jail for doing drugs. So he hears about the recent law of victimless crime, including drug consumption, to be decriminalized. He is glad about it, and he uses that, what do you call it? That opportunity to buy drugs from his friend. So he uses his savings to buy methamphetamine from a drug dealer he knew from his friend. And when his savings are drained, he asks his parents for money, usually a lot since drugs have very high prices. So he uses poor excuses like, I'm using that money for a school project, when in reality he uses that money to buy drugs. And when his parents refuse to do that, he'll crash out and often resort to robbery and theft. And when he's like really too addicted, he'll overdose and eventually die. In short, victimless crimes will gradually turn to crimes with a victim. So it's not just drug use that will rise, but also sexual exploitation or normalized gambling. So the criminalization of victimless crimes isn't just to punish, but it's a mere target to protect social values over time. So simply it's to protect society, all of society. So those points I have said earlier, in response to the unjust laws that punishes people of poverty or addiction, we say that full decriminalization isn't the answer, but we should reform sentencing and treatment, and of course bringing them to rehabilitation, but keep a legal backstop for deterrence and accountability. So in the long run, decriminalization of victimless crime can lead to the law's ability to guide society into becoming a stable individual being weakened, accountability mechanisms in human being obscured, harmful behaviors being normalized gradually over time, and the failure to protect silent or invisible victims like kids, families, and dependents. So in conclusion, the motion, as I view it, is about whether the state can completely remove legal consequences for actions that may appear victimless, but in reality can spread harm through society. Ladies and gentlemen, that is why we proudly oppose the government's team stance on why we should decriminalize victimless crime. Thank you.